Ba 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 da ba da ba ba da ba da ba 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 da ba ba. Welcome to episode 6 of our study of Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Today we continue down to Jesus' right on the table in the Last Supper painting, and we talk about the apostle Andrew. And when we look at Andrew's posture, we see that he has his hands up, and it's important to note that when Leonardo da Vinci was making this great masterpiece, he also kept a journal of what he thought each apostle should look like. And in his journal, he described that Andrew should be unmistakable, with his hands up in the air, with his shoulders up to his ears, and with his mouth gaping open in astonishment. However, when we look at the finished product of the Last Supper, we see that all we see is that his hands are up in the air. We do not see his shoulders up to his ears. We do not see his mouth gaping open in astonishment. So, why did Leonardo depict Andrew in this way in the finished product? And why did he originally want to depict it even more dramatically? Well, his astonishment could come, of course, from Jesus' statement that he has to suffer and die and give his life. And so perhaps Andrew is in astonishment saying, Lord, you shouldn't have to suffer and die. Perhaps he's sort of trying to pass guilt when Jesus is saying, one of you will betray me. And so he's got his hands in the air saying, well, it's not me, Jesus. I wouldn't betray you. Perhaps also it's because he's got his hands up in the air as a precursor to the way that he will give his life and be martyred for Christ. We know that in great Christian art, all of the martyrs and great saints are oftentimes depicted with the instrument of their martyrdom or in the posture of their martyrdom. Andrew, we know, was martyred by being crucified on an X-shaped cross. And so here he is depicted in Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece with his hands already being extended to where they might be on a cross. Now, they're not fully there, and they're not fully extended, but we hear, of course, that Andrew, not only was he crucified on an X-shaped cross, but he even desired to show his love and faith for Christ by giving his life. And so at this point, we see that his martyrdom is still in process. His gift of his life is still on the way. It's an already giving of his life, but not yet fully extending his arms in martyrdom on the cross. And so here we see that precursor to the way Andrew would fully give of his life. And it's true in our life as well. Our life is a process of giving our life, of laying down our life. And so we might not be fully extended to giving everything, but we're still in that process. Another interesting thing about the posture of Andrew's hands is that they're open in sort of a posture of surrender or abandonment. And this is actually a traditional posture of prayer. When we look at some of the earliest Christian art in the catacombs, in all kinds of places, we oftentimes see people depicted in prayer with their hands up in the air in prayer and in supplication. This is an ancient posture of prayer known as the orans position, a position of abandonment, of surrender to the Lord. And we even see it at the Mass. When we think about the priest at Mass, he has his hands up in the air in a posture of prayer, of supplication, and of abandonment and surrender to God. And so we see this already with Andrew at the first altar, at the table of the Last Supper, with his hands in prayer in the air. Now, as we think about ourselves, the way we approach God in prayer, the way we approach God at the Mass, the question can be asked, how do we approach God? Do we come to him with this prayer of abandonment, this posture of abandonment, or do we sort of try to clutch onto things? In our prayer, do we sort of say, well, I have my solutions, here's my plan. We grasp onto the things that we want to be and we ask God to do those plans, or do we abandon ourselves? Truth be told, the only posture of our hearts in prayer should be one of abandonment and surrender to God. We shouldn't go to God clutching our solutions, our solving of the problems, but instead, God has no need of our solutions. He only wants us to come to him with open hands, to bring us his problems, and he can offer us the solutions and the healing of our life. Andrew shows us this, and Leonardo da Vinci shows us this at the altar at the Last Supper painting, as Andrew shows that posture, that orans position of abandonment and surrender to God in prayer. Please join us next time as we continue to the right of Andrew, and we'll speak about the Apostle James, which can kind of be confusing because we've already spoken about a James to the left of Jesus, but this is actually a different James, and we'll talk more about that next time. God bless you, stay holy, and stay healthy. Ba 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 ba